Morning, everybody. Hi, this is Mike Balzer of All Things 3D. This is 3D in Review, and obviously not on a Friday. Why? Because we are going to be actually working live and talking about the solar eclipse that should be occurring about 17 minutes, maybe a little bit before that. And what you see behind me is Google Earth, which I tried out very late last night. There was a great article in Road to VR, which I'll get to in a moment. But this is an actual video capture of me playing around with it above the area that I live, which is in the south portion of Portland. There you go. I just had an eclipse. So if you don't have this opportunity, but you do have a VR headset, jump in and use Google Earth. It's a very interesting experience. Plus, the area of Oregon or Portland is really detailed. It was kind of fun to find my own house out there. Okay, with that on mind, let's kind of move right into the article from Road to VR, Google Earth. This is where I found the information. If you actually go out to the Google Earth VR site, they don't even talk about it. But this was a new menu item, and it talks about the entire process. And if you're not familiar with it, and I'm assuming that you are, the total solar eclipse is going to be occurring very shortly. In fact, what it shows here is that let's see, I can't magnify this, but what does it say? About 10:30, right? So in about 15 minutes, and which is kind of cool because I have an actual camera that we're going to go to in a minute. I set up a live. If you saw my tweet or on Facebook, head out to the live cam, and I can we're going to be going out there in a moment. So if you want to follow it, right now I'm in the tech closet, so I don't have any access to it. So my only experience is going to be just like yours if you don't have it, and that's through my own webcams. Now I also have the views up and running, and that will create a stereo 4K image that I will upload later. It's recording right now, so that should be pretty cool. That's in the back of my house. Now, keep in mind, in Portland itself, it's 99.6, if I remember, percent of an eclipse. You have to go a little further south in order to get a full 100%. As you can see in the image here, there is the path that if you're within this small band, you'll be able to experience a full 100%. As I said, it's what, about a century that we've had one of these over the entire United States, and so this will be pretty cool. I was hoping to have my own little app out, but I guess I got a little absorbed with Google Earth, plus something else that I was working on today or this weekend, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, and that is the Windows 10 update that now allows a lesser PC, meaning integrated graphics, to actually use their Windows mixed reality headsets. And I created an actual mobile system, which I'll get into in a little bit. So let's see. Let's kind of jump out. Maybe we can find, let's see, I think NASA has some solar eclipse stuff. In fact, I think they have a live cam, if I remember correctly. Let's see what they are. Here we go. So that's what the eclipse live stream looks like from NASA. Let's see. Let's go out and watch it right now. There you go. Now, obviously, they're looking at this from an aircraft. Now, they are further. Oh, okay. So look at that. We have a crescent already. All right. So while we're looking at that, I'm going to jump to my actual camera. So let's go back and look what's live now. We should have two of them. Let's go ahead and take a look at my own 360 camera that's out there right now. There we go. Uh, Interesting that it's not showing up as a, that could have been my own fault. No, it, Yeah, I don't know why it's not showing up as a 360 here, but it's still kind of cool. As you can see, there's the sun there. More importantly, you can see how it is it affecting my yard. Huh, I'm interested why that's not showing as a 360. Maybe because I went out to uh, so as you can see, the eclipse that's shown here, let's jump back to here, already shows it fully enveloping it in Salem, yet my image still shows it not quite there yet. So I don't know where they were receiving theirs. Okay, looks like they saturated, but again, you can head out to my own, which is located at, if you're interested, HTTPS YouTube. So there you go. Notice you can see the shadow of the this 360 stem. I have this on about a 5-foot pole, so pretty interesting how that's working out. I'm, yeah, I don't know why that's not showing up. Hmm. Oh well. So let's continue. Let's jump back into the show, and because obviously you're going to be watching this a little bit later. Um, and this will probably be recorded because it is live, so it will continue. In fact, here we go. Let's go to the live broadcast. So there it is. There's the live broadcast. Okay, well, we'll jump back to that a little bit later. So we'll jump out of the live, we'll pause it, and we'll come back to that later. Okay. All right, so let's go back to Google Earth. So if you have either an Oculus or an HTC Vive, this will be something that you'll be able to grab yourself and utilize. And as I said, it's pretty interesting to be able to see this within your headset from obviously whatever position you want. I decided to hover probably about 100 feet above. Um, but this is the first time I actually had gone to the Portland area, and I was amazed at the amount of detail that you can find in Google Earth. I shouldn't be, but the fact is that being in the VR perspective really made it very cool. And there you have, I believe it's Mount Hood in the background there. And here we go. We should be approaching the eclipse right now. Okay. So we're still about 10 minutes off to a full eclipse. So let's kind of move on into our next item here. So let's actually, I'll tell you, well, I don't want to do that. It'll saturate my bandwidth. Okay. So let's move on. As mentioned, the main theme is about how VR the Microsoft way. As you know, the mixed reality headset has been out for a little while now. In fact, the Windows 10. Let's see. Tell you what. Let me me jump to a tweet. Okay, so let's find it. Okay, so let's do a share. Okay, so here we go. I've sent out a little tweet. So let's go back to the Windows section. Now, this is the kind of an update from Zach Bowden of the items that were in the latest update, which you should, if you're on the Insider Edition, you'll have to enable that within your Windows environment and also select fast ring. Now keep in mind, in doing so, it is in beta, and I've already found, for instance, Sansar will not work in it, and they don't plan to utilize it anytime in the near future, because obviously it's in beta. So some things will not work when you go to the what they call the fast ring of the Insider Edition. But for my purposes, the reason that I moved to it is because it has the latest updates to the mixed reality. What do they call it, the Cliff Room. But more importantly, they have some new features, and and here there's a lot of new features in Windows that you can try out. And I don't know if they actually identify here the new features in. Yeah, the mixed reality portal icon has been updated, but they don't really talk about it. So I'm going to show a video. And the important thing to remember in this video that I'm going to be showing, and I'll go ahead and jump to it now and bring down the volume, is that I found a couple of things out. We're going to talk about that in our scanner section. So let me jump to it. This is the actual room now, but I'm using this directly through the HP headset. And the reason for that is there is no feature to record video anymore as in the previous version. Now, that's probably because it's in beta. So I had to record it, which was a real hassle because I had to hold the camera. I built kind of a special little cylinder adapter with some foam in it to support the lens. And I was able to record this with audio because I actually ran that separately from the headset. But I noticed they had these things called actiongrams, which are kind of like holograms. And I'll go ahead and pause it right now. And it allows you to really get the experience or the feeling like these are real life human beings. So I wanted to know more about it. And again, I'll talk about that in our scanning section. But to keep in mind, what you're watching here, and I'll kind of scrub back, is I'll have a little bit later some video. This is done with a Intel NUC, a KB Lake NUC, which is about 35 watts. So what that means is that I was able to use that with an Anton Bauer video lithium-ion battery, and the one that I have is only 86 watts per hour. So it's not even a large battery. They've got some larger ones. Plus, yeah, you can also go with the Sony V-Lock, which has some interesting features. But in either case, these are batteries normally used for video cameras or lighting systems. But I was able to adapt it with a coax adapter, a male plug, which had an outer ring. What was it? I want to say 3.5, inner ring is 2.5, and adapted to it. The batteries are only 14.8, but I looked it up, and the actual range that you can use on a Nook is about 13. I can't say 12 because it didn't work with 12 volts, or actually a 12-volt battery does not always, it doesn't last that long at 12 volts. So it goes anywhere from about 12 volts to 24 volts, something like that. So you have this range, and I've noticed this also when I was working with the NVIDIA Shield TV. There's this range, and I thought, well, that might be the case here. It sure was. Works perfectly with this battery. I was able to get about 2 hours when I was running this. Obviously, if you beefed it up or doubled it, you could get about 4 hours, or put two in parallel. That way you can swap them out. I'm also working on creating a shutdown feature circuit, but currently right now it just powers it directly. So you have to keep an eye on it so it does not run out of juice before you shut down properly. Obviously, I recommend that you shut down properly. But the fact is that I was able to actually put this on my body, which I'll talk about a little bit more, and walk around not only indoors but outdoors. I think is something that is not realized as far as the potential and strength of the new Microsoft mixed reality headsets. Now, again, they're developer versions. There's some rough edges. I don't really like the Fresnel lenses. They're small, but we'll talk about that a little bit later in the tech closet. Okay, so let's move on. The other big news and update to our 3D updates from the past is, uh, well, that was interesting. Let's jump to the Vive. Is dun, 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 the Vive headset is now $599. So that's about $200 off the previous unit. So, like many of us who were jumped in early, uh, let's jump back. Uh, you obviously paid the price of being an early bird. I actually didn't jump in right away, so I was able to get mine during the holiday season for even less. But the fact that $599, that includes the two controllers, headsets, and the light towers, is a pretty decent price. But keep in mind, you still need a fairly decent computer. I've tried to do that on the cheap with my backpack, and I'll give an update later on using a NVIDIA GTX 1050 Ti, which you can get for about $150. And guess what? This particular version from Gigabyte actually functioned pretty well. I was surprised about that. So, if you're looking at creating a very low cost system, you can probably either through this NVIDIA GTX 1050 overclocked version, or um, some of the Radeon cards that have just been coming out at a lower end. You should be able to do something for about $500 and get a decent experience. Now, it's not going to be the ultimate VR experience, but if you don't have the budget, or you don't have the money for a more expensive video card, you can do this at a lower cost. And I don't have some video, but maybe next week when I actually put in the new power supply. But again, I will talk about that in the tech closet. Give you an update on the VR backpack on the cheap. All right. The other thing that I noticed when I was searching here is these trackers are now available. $99, you can buy them. Now, if you're not familiar with the tracker, and those of you who are following VR probably are, the tracker itself can be attached to other objects and can be seen. So, for instance, this mixed reality video that a lot of people are talking, you attach this to your camera, and then your actual physical camera is tracked in the VR environment. The other thing is that you can put it on objects and they can be tracked in the VR, or you can put them on yourself. There are a lot of people who are working on creating actual articulated joint motion tracking by using multiple units. And again, they are now available, 99. And some of the features here is that you have some developer guidelines, and there's an actual 3D model of the unit so that you can, I guess, fabricate it or utilize this in your VR experiences so that it knows where the tracker is. I don't see a purpose of it, but I see a lot of interesting opportunities with this, and the fact that it's available, I'll probably grab one sooner than later. And so I thought that was actually better news, since I already have two HTC Vives, than getting a cheaper HTC Vive. My opinion, I like the HTC Vive. It is heavier than the Oculus, and it's much heavier than the HP mixed reality headset. But it's a cool system if you have the right uh, PC for it. All right, the other news is let's see what else do we got here. Yeah, let's get right into our 3D technology. Now, this is the core, no pun intended, of all systems, and that is the fact is that a lot of them are powered by the Intel Core i5. The eighth generation was just announced over the weekend. And what does it offer? Well, some of the tests that have come out, and we'll get to the Nantec, say that it is faster now. Um, and then they have obviously multiple versions, and then some of these other features, but these were all available. So what they're saying is that, if you look at my title in the show notes, uh, is this Coffee Lake? No, this is just an update to the previous KB Lake or Coffee Lake um, update, or meaning the seventh generation. Supposedly a little bit later will be the actual Coffee Lake. But they talk about this. Where's it at? Let's learn more. I was going through there, and one of the things that I was interested was, what would this provide us? Let's go at the eighth generation i5. They talk about this 4K graphics. Well, the reality is you could do 4K graphics on the previous version. So what's different about this? So when I looked at this processor, and then they core them. One thing is that you have 4 cores, but you have 8 threads. So it's essentially now an i7 in an internal. And if you go with the 80, I don't even show it here. The 8370, is that what it is? Let's jump back. Um, yeah, let's look at this. It now has 6 processors and 6, yeah, so here we go. No. So you have 4 cores, but 8 threads. So that's the i7. So what does the i5 have? All right, so that didn't really change. Supposedly the newer Coffee Lake will have actually 6 cores and 12 threads, but that is not the case. Again, this is a refresh. It does appear to be a little bit lower wattage than the previous version and is programmable. And here we'll talk about it, but let's go feature and performance. But the thing is, and this was also supported Thunderbolt 3, which I'll talk about in the next couple of weeks. I do plan to take my Nook, which is a Kaby Lake or KB Lake um, processor with Thunderbolt 3, and work with the external housing with a video card so that you have an all-in-one unit and a very compact. You can either go mobile with it or use it as a full outright uh, desktop. So the thing that I was interested, especially if you're going to be running with mixed reality, is the actual graphics, the integrated graphic. And what I found is that they don't really identify anything other than it is now called the 4K UHD 620. Now, the KB Lake that I have has a Iris 640 Plus, and there is, I think, the Iris 650 Plus in the i7 version of that. And then obviously there is a lower version of the Kevin. This is the U um, suffix of this particular chip. But the point is that even though they talk about it, so I'm curious on if this is the same thing as the Iris with just a new naming convention, because it will also support, if that is the case, and if this is cheaper, I would grab it. It does seem to work great with mixed reality. So if you're wanting to get a Windows mixed reality headset and don't want to spend a lot of money on a graphics card, it does appear when it's finally released, you'll be able to support it. And I was able to run the Iris 640, as I said, built in the Kaby Lake U suffix. And let's see if I can actually go back and compare. Let's go back a little further. So as I said, I used an i5. It's a little lower cost. The whole Intel Nook that I bought was 380. I spent $70, no, actually $35 on an 8 GB SODIMM for it. It's DDR4. And then I also went with a $100 PCIe M2 card, which gives you obviously faster performance. And so basically for about $500, I had a very compact system. You can actually expand the RAM up to 32 gigs on this system. And obviously you can go up to about 1 TB now on these new PCI M2 cards. So you can have a very powerful system. And the other cool thing is the Intel NUC has a micro SD card built in, so you can have external and memory. Now, I wanted to go with a more compact, slim unit. Let's see if I can bring it up. I'll bring it up later. But they do have a version that has a larger housing so that you can support a standard SSD 2.5 millimeter. So back to the Intel cores, they compared them here, as you can see, even going back to the 7600. Uh, but let's see if I can bring this up. This is the T. Okay, so let's look at this one, which was the U. Notice it's only 2 cores. Um, here, yeah, so 2 cores and 4 threads, where the i4 that's desktop. So the one that's built into the NUC is only this unit here, but it still seems to run pretty good. Let's find the U again. I just missed it. And it appears that there is no upgrade to the U. So it appears at this particular point, if you want to buy a NUC, it will still only have this processor. Again, as I mentioned, let's go ahead and click on that. The graphics built into this, yeah, is the Iris Plus. Oh, that's interesting. So the i5-7287U has the Iris graphics 650. I don't think there's a NUC with that in it. Let's jump to the other one that's here, the 7360, which I think is the unit that I have. This should have the Iris, yeah, this graphics 640, which work well. That's what you're seeing behind me here. And let me jump back to the screen so you can see that. And so these are some charts. The Intel link will be in the show notes so you can look at it yourself. Maximum memory is 32 gig. So the NUC is a very compact, small unit that you can work with. As I said, the maximum resolution is 4K support. So it's funny, this is basically the same thing as the new refresh 8th generation chips. So if you're getting a good deal on the previous Kaby Lake and not the Kaby Lake refresh, go with it. I don't think you're going to see much, but one of the things they want to do is push the price down a little bit. It appears AMD has been knocking on their door, so they're trying to obviously provide more incentive. This was also interesting that they released these so quickly, but again, there's not much difference. So I'm assuming that the processor integrated graphics is very similar to the previous versions that support 4K, but that was also the case in the past. So just a little bit of marketing rebranding there. And here you go. Here's the Ultra 4K functionality. And as you can see, they talk about 360s, which is kind of important because most 360s, good quality, needs to be at least 4K. I would actually say 8K would be better, but even most phones are able to support 8K through, I should say, higher ed phones like the Pixel XL are able to support 8K fairly well if it's been rendered properly at an MP4 high stream rate. I've gotten some really good quality from doing that. Uh, and then here they talk about for VR, which obviously would be the case with the mixed reality headset. And then finally, Anantech has done some benchmarking on the chips themselves. And it's interesting, they have a new 15-watt mobile version of it. Now, that is significant because even the mobile version of the chip that's using the NUC, I think pushes out to 35. One thing that I don't know if they address it here, that 15 watt is programmable, so it can actually be pushed up even higher that for better performance. And here they talk about the pricing of the i7 as well as the i5. As you can see, their pricing is a little lower, and obviously your price will vary depending on where you shop. And they talk about the HD 620 to the UHD 620. Say it's in the better for 4K. But like I said, the previous version also supported HDMI 2. So I don't know if there's a huge difference in what you're seeing now, what you had previously. Uh, but again, if this is what's going to be available, and then they're talking about where's the Coffee Lake. So they talk about the 12 to 18 month cadence. So what do we show? Coffee Lake will be available sometime at I'm assuming at the end. Again, 14 nanometer, and then Cannon Lake will be 10 nanometer. And then we have Ice Lake, which they're already talking about, which will have some even better performance. All right, so great article in Antex. So head out there yourself, and you can see more from that perspective. Okay, so what else do we have? Okay, I thought this was kind of cool. Uh, Landscape architecture, let's get back into the actual tangible 3D printing. And I think this is kind of cool. And I've actually, when I was running the service bureau in San Luis Obispo, I did have a number of architects come in, not landscape architectures, that wanted three-dimensional models. And as you can see here, they actually 3D printed the more than likely the topography, the 3D elements with obviously some architectural elements on it to show what I'm assuming that the landscape architecture would look like. Um, I don't see that being utilized a lot. You know, I'm actually a huge proponent now of VR and augmented reality. I guess that can provide some very quick models by using a tablet or a VR headset. And now with the opportunities with the Windows mixed reality headset, I can see this going far. So it is pretty cool. So, we've kind of gone past. Let's go back and look at, did we miss it? Here I've been talking and, it looks about the same now. Oh, let's do maybe we're doing a refresh. Hmm. Well, I'll have to go back and look at it myself. I've missed the Eclipse being on the show here. Oh, well. So if you've had a chance to go out, actually look at the web link yourself. As mentioned, I do have the views set up in the back recording this, so I'll be able to jump back out there and take a look at that when the show's over. And in fact, I'll probably have to hurry up and get out there and grab that recording. So that was pretty interesting. Okay, so let's jump back to where are we at? Back at the landscape. So as you can see here, making 3D models might be good if you've got these on display. People can see them. As mentioned, it may be lower cost to just be able to use some new applications coming out where you then take your models and be able to use them on an iPad or some other device, like I said, the mixed reality headset, or even an Oculus or the HTC Vive, to look and actually be either from a bird's eye view, which is good for this kind of model, or actually walking around the entire environment. You could put the plants and everything else. So I see a lot of work in that area. And the next week I'll cover how they're looking into how different types of virtual reality are being used and supported. Okay, so let's move on. Let's see. From our 3D in medicine, I have a little video that I will show. So this video is actually showing the binding and the technique, which we'll get into here in a second. And essentially, it is a product that allows you to actually grow or 3D print from a cell by cell method. And what this would be good for is that you'll be able to actually 3D print tissue with complex cellular structures. So it's just not a flat, as you can see here, you could build the entire infrastructure. And here's another look of it actually being made. So they don't really talk a lot about it. I will have this in the show notes. Unlike previous versions, um, where you literally use like a FDM type extrusion or extruding process to create a lattice. This is actually creating the cells and interleaving the cell structures versus just creating a lattice that the cells grow out of. So it's a little different, and more importantly, can probably relate to or push faster tissue growth from a fabrication standpoint. Okay, so let's get into the scanning section of our show. And I'm going to kind of digress a little bit because this actually came out in September. I don't know why I missed it. And I'll play the little video here. So actually, let's play this one here.
ActionGram is an app that allows you to bring holograms into the real world and create and share videos.
Being able to incorporate visual effects into live action right there on set is a lot of fun and gets your brain going.
It's great to work with holograms in the first place. That's already cool, but the fact that there are these iconic characters makes it even cooler.
About this is that Hola is being so expensive. This wasn't part of the scheme.
You know, you want to kind of direct your performance. Action.
Welcome to Holland. This studio, and you can see there it looks like a setup. It's 360 cameras. There's another video that talks about the process of that. And now they brought him in the studio.
And I see somebody there in the northern sweat. That's me.
Trainer.
This is fascinating.
Earlier. Really realistic.
We talked about holograms on Star Trek, and to actually be doing that in reality today, it was a lot of fun. Technology and being a part of it at the cutting edge is a thrill that very few human beings get.
So it was really fun creating videos with the George Takei holograms because he's just hilarious.
Oh, no, she didn't.
You get this like really high bar of talent that you normally wouldn't get to work with.
Love that.
It's not every day that you get a chance to work with George Takei.
Live action holograms that are three-dimensional and function within your actual three-dimensional space was mind-blowing.
I think it's a really exciting time for video creation and storytelling.
I think that's really disappointing, even though you can capture video. It's kind of expensive just to capture video. All right, so I'm going to jump to this video here on how to make it.
Whenever a story takes place in a nebulous high-tech future, there always seems to be graphic images on this, but they don't tell you more information. By combining images from all these cameras, computers can figure out where something is in 3D space and what it looks like, and then use all that data to generate a 3D holographic image. Half of the cameras are RGB cameras, which form an image based on visible light. Their main job is to capture accurate colors and general outlines of the performer. The other half are IR cameras, which capture the infrared light reflected from objects in the scene to map out depth. These cameras help generate most of the 3D figure and capture the texture of things like faces, fabrics, and other props. The team calibrates all of these cameras, and then it's time to record things like actors or animals or whatever you want to digitize to help. Cameras are the infrared light reflector to record most of the cameras, and then it's time to record things like actors or animals or whatever you want to digitize to help tell a story. The cameras then send all files, whatever you want to digitize to help tell a story. The cameras then send all files, powerful enough to play it back. 3D figure, powerful enough to create these holograms in the first place.
And thank you for watching this episode of SciShow, which was brought to you by
the infrared cameras 3 diameter. It's surrounded by a
So there you go. There's what it looks like. They did a close-up, but you have a bunch of video cameras as well as some depth sensing cameras. They capture, what does it look like? 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 systems. So you divide 360 by 8. What does that come out to? I'm hoping it's 8. Yeah, it might be 9. Might be 9 stations. So essentially every 40 degrees, right? You have, is that right? yeah, 40 degrees, you would have one of the stations, and then you would then stitch these all together to come up with your RGB video that you then overlay over the depth information to create, as they call them, holograms. And if we jump back to my previous, as you can see, they're quite realistic. And now that you can use these within the mixed reality headset, not just a hologram, I can see more potential with this. In fact, I use this guy for a demonstration in something else that I did a little bit later, which I'll discuss pretty soon. So I thought, again, very cool system. And having George Takai demonstrate this, why I didn't catch it, maybe I ignored it because I can't afford the actual HoloLens, but now that I can afford a mixed reality, I have more interest in this. Okay, the next thing in our VR update is UPS, and this is from Engadget. I saw this last week, but since we didn't do the show on Friday, I didn't talk about it. But essentially, UPS is now using VR simulation to train its drivers. It just seemed like a matter of time and a no-brainer. With a VR headset, you can literally swivel your head around anywhere you want to. A realistic model city. You can literally drive around, and obviously to determine routes, they can probably deploy accident-related objects in different vehicles to train them. And more importantly, as you're probably aware of, UPS tries to find the best routes and the quickest way to get from route to route. And it is really a lot of work for these guys. And sadly, some of them have taken shortcuts, like actually throwing your packages. I've had that happen to myself back in Morro Bay. Now they don't even come up all the way to my driveway. They just kind of leave them at the garage. So if you go back to my live cam, you can see what I'm talking about. So I thought that was kind of funny. All right, so let's jump into the demo section. And let's show off this HoloLens. You know, we talked about it last week. It actually is pretty nice. One of the things I noticed is that the lenses are smaller than what you have on the HTC Vive or the Oculus. They're also, in my opinion, cheaper. But again, this is a $300 developer headset. For that price, I'm hoping that they improve it. But then there might be a luxury version that you can buy for $500 with some better optics. But the fact is that this works fairly well. The other reason I think they have smaller optics is they have only, what did I figure out, 2.98 or 2.8 diagonal inch LCD versus AMOLED, but I really didn't notice the difference. And one of the cool things about AMOLED or LCD is they use an RGB versus a pentile, so you can actually get even better resolution. And these are 1400 by 1400, so it's a little bit better than what you get out of the HTC Vive and the Oculus, and it does show up. Now, obviously, with the Fresnel lenses, you did get some aberrations. I'll jump back to it in a moment here. You do get some aberrations. It does seem a little soft, but one of the reasons for that is they use this interesting technique, fovea technique, so it only sharpens what you see in front of you, and you get a little lower resolution on the other stuff. So let's jump back. But the whole, this is actually on medium resolution. I will have a demo later where they have the high resolution. For whatever reason, this has great anti-aliasing. The high resolution does not. So there's some aliasing, but I noticed the textures seem to be of higher resolution. It does seem sharp. The text seems sharp, much sharper than what you can see in the Oculus, or not much sharper than what you can see in the HTC. But the FOV is less. And again, it's because it has the smaller lenses, so it's more like a periscope. This is kind of like cardboard. Lenses are a little bit bigger than cardboard. I'm sorry, not cardboard, the Daydream headset, but it's equivalent. Also the band, because unlike my own design where you have more adjustment in this hinge here, it's set for only a particular portion of where your forehead is to your eyes. And sadly, it fits higher on my crown, so I don't get a real good tight grip. But obviously, again, this might they'll take feedback and more than likely, I hope, make this better. But it does work adequately, and I've used it outdoors, which I'll show in a video. And the reason I did that is, as I talked about earlier, I created the system here. Let me put this back so you can see it. It's a belt system that contains the Nook. I have a USB 3 to HDMI port that I use to plug in a small, what is it, a 7-inch 1024 by 800 LCD panel, which works out very cool. It's got a capacitive touch sensitive on it, and it allows me to literally use this like a tablet. I can then unplug the power. You still have the HDMI. You can fake it out, and I did this already, but then you lose access to the screen, and I found that a little cumbersome. Hopefully they'll refine that in builds that are coming out later. Let me jump to the screen here. So what's kind of cool about it is that I was able to pair this with the Anton Bauer battery pack. And again, this one is a 14.4 volt, 88 watts per hour. They have some up to 160 watts, and then you could make two of these, put these two together. Reasonable. The batteries themselves cost anywhere from $100 to $300, depending on the wattage and the company you buy them from. And the actual plates are about $10. And then you have to wire in your own coaxial power cable to it. And then if you wanted to, I didn't do it here, you could put two of these cables together, pair them together, and then you could swap batteries out without actually having to shut down. And this is something that are being done in some backpacks. So you could do this on your own. The only thing that this doesn't have, and I think there's some circuitry built into both the Sony V-Lock batteries as well as the Anton Bauer to actually send out signals back to the computer, whatever, that allow you to determine your voltage level. I haven't pursued that. Maybe in the future, and then like convert that to USB and then send that out, or just build a small circuit that monitors your voltage, and if it falls below a certain level, you do a soft shutdown. Right now, this particular battery has a little button on the side that with 4 LED indicators that tell you your battery level. I just keep an eye on that, and just do my shutdown at the time that it gets down to 1, and then I swap it out and then bring it back up. And again, if you had 2 of these plates, you could run that yourself. And as I said, this also has a micro SD card so that you can support it with external files and so forth. There isn't much in the mixed reality store at this particular point, or the Windows Store. I think there's 2 or 3 apps, and they were basically made for the hologram. But I do think by the time this is released, you'll start to see some products out there. The company who made Sunshine, what was it called? I can't remember. It was the zombie shoot up based like in a Western environment. That particular company is making another game that will also be supported on the mixed reality system. I'll have a note in the show notes. But for now, very reasonably priced. Like I said, computer itself about $500, battery pack about $100, and then a belt for $10. The HDMI was less than $10. Cable was less than 10. So altogether, maybe $600, $650 to put this belt system together. The other important item is as I mentioned, the LCD panel. You can now get these super cheap, anywhere between $35 to $100, depending on the resolution. This is a 7-inch 1024. It was about $65. And what's cool about it is that once you power it up, you have a touch sensitive screen. So it's like a tablet, which makes it very easy to manipulate and operate it. What I did is I just unplugged the USB, which powers it down, but still makes it think it has an HDMI connection. Sadly, if you remove the HDMI connection with the current version of mixed reality, it shuts down the mixed reality system. And you can use a dummy HDMI. I did use that and just used a startup script to bring up the HDMI. But I found that sometimes it doesn't come up automatically, and you have to then shut it down. So it made it much better just to use this little tablet, which I then throw in my one of my pouches in my vest. In the future, I'll just put a belt clip on it so that you can clip it to your belt. The other thing is currently at least all I have, I guess they have some hand controllers. I have not been one of the lucky ones to have it. Xbox controller, I just plug the USB directly into the controller and able to power it. I haven't been able to get the remote dongle to work with it, but I haven't put much effort in. It works well as a wired device, and since I had a free USB cable, it works well and you can teleport. But the goal was really to kind of walk around. So I'm going to go ahead and jump to the little video that I took, and I'll put this out on YouTube as well. This is cool from the standpoint is
each time I come up,
down,
I'm gonna put my hands on the side. When I pop down in my squat position, chest up, my back's gonna be flat. I'm gonna pull up, I'm gonna extend through the hips, and then I'm gonna plane it down into a squat position. So come down, feet balanced, chest up, eyes up, pull, get underneath it. Everybody look at my elbows pointing straight up, knees out, get up. When I get to the top, I'm gonna dip, I'm gonna explode through, and I'm gonna finish all the way up vertically. Dip, explode. Come back up, drop the weight, and back down.
I think there's a couple reasons for that. And the reason I think personally is because they're basically parallax cameras, you only have a confined area to work in. And as you can see in my backyard, I had some hedges, so there's some patterns that it could use to essentially create tracking points with. So I'm wondering what this would work like in a room that has nothing in it, bare. I did see another YouTube video where somebody had a green screen, had it facing it, and it couldn't recognize or couldn't track. My room is fairly cluttered, so I didn't have any issues internally, and then obviously in my backyard. But when I tried to use this on asphalt, I had some real issues with tracking and had, even though I recorded some video, it was a little more difficult. But in the long run, it did work really well, and I was able to use it outside with my mobile system. And yeah, I thought it was very interesting what you can do for about $900 now in the VR perspective. And obviously, this is going to be a boon for architects on a budget who still want to show their clients. And also the fact is that it has Microsoft behind it. And that to me is going to be an extremely important point in the future. And we'll see how that works out with Microsoft. I think it's going to be a success because of its low cost and having Microsoft behind it. Okay, so on that note, one more item. I don't have it back here. I've had some success with my budget backpack, my VR backpack. As I talked about earlier, I was able to use a 15 about a 15 amp 12 volt source. It powered it up. I was able to use my HTC Vive with no problem at all. I was able to run the thing in an overclock position, and it actually worked really well. And I was very, very surprised with that. And so for about $600, you could build yourself a backpack. Again, that doesn't include the battery, but it would be the same pricing for the either Anton Bauer or the Sony V-Lock batteries. And again, you would have the same issue of ensuring that it shuts down the system when you get to a particular voltage. And so that's something that you would have to keep in mind as you're working with it. Or make a dual battery system. There is room on the bottom of the plate. I sent the link out before on my little Amazon wish list of the parts that you would need. I'm now going to be converting it to a higher range. Actually, that's a good point. The current version does not work with the Anton Bauer or V-Lock batteries because it's limited to just 12 volts because of the type of power supply used in there. I do have one now that should support it, and I will be working with that a little bit later. It will fit off to the side of the case that I'm working with and provide about 150 watts and can be powered by a range of 12 volts to 25 volts. So they'll be within the range of the Nook or the V-Lock or the Anton Bauer batteries. So I will have an update next week on that. But right now, I've been really busy with the Microsoft Mixed Reality. I'm hoping to have an app to show off next week. And on that note, let's jump back to the solar eclipse. It says it's live, but it's just not doing anything. I think it might have, yeah, well, don't know. Obviously, there's a ton of coverage out there, space videos that you can look at. We already looked at them. No, it's probably it. So I missed the actual eclipse. Hopefully somebody was able to use my camera and take a look at it. So I'll be shutting it down soon, and then you can enjoy it. And like I said, I'll also have some views captured video as well. Okay, actually I wasn't even on the right screen, so let me jump back to it. Here we go. So there you go. There's a live scene of the 360. Why it's only being shown as an rectangular, I don't know at this particular point. And it looks like we have a nice bright sun, but it doesn't look like it's really changed that much from previous. So I don't know why. Somehow I don't think it's working right. Oh, well, I'll have to shut it down. So on that note, I appreciate you tuning in, and I'll see you, I'm thinking probably Friday. So we'll have some updates on Friday. Chris will be back. Chris was actually in Bend, Oregon, so maybe he'll have some footage for us as well. I should have called him in, but he didn't reply to my email. So I have a feeling he was also taking another little vacation in Bend, Oregon, and obviously doing an eclipse party as well. Hopefully he wasn't dancing around nude. Who knows? Okay, on that note, I am going to say goodbye. Goodbye, and I'll see you Friday. Bye.